A compelling detective story, a cloak and dagger action, and a romantic drama, all these stories were taken from real life. The history of Kazakhstan is inseparable from the world history. Reflections on history, our version.
A knight of science. He wore a top hat, a coat, and a satin jacket made from blue suede. He held a new plant species with one hand, a herbarium, and the naturalist's main instrument, a shovel, with the other hand. He held it as if it was a sword. Closer to the end of my trip, I'm starting to wish the Academy would let me stay here for the second half of this summer to explore the Yaik and Volga steppes. I want to make the most amazing discoveries in this land. A passage from Peter Pallas's travels in various provinces of the Russian Empire. The published journals of Pallas, in which he described our lands, are of interest to people. They represent astonishing discoveries of one of the greatest naturalists of the 18th century. Even 100 years from then, any book would have the same beginning, as Pallas wrote. Even though his books were written in German, they were translated to many other languages. Peter Simon Pallas's Travels to the Kazakh Steppe, the selected edition. It was the one great expedition of the Academy to Siberia. In 1769, Peter Simon Pallas visited our town. He had an opportunity to witness Kazakh people's lives, to describe the customs and traditions. Chapter 1. A Scientific Caravan. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, 1760. The European scientist admired a German inventor's genius. He was just 19 years old when he got his PhD in medicine, and so Pallas was in the newspapers again. When Peter Pallas turned 23, he joined the London Scientific Society and the Roman Academy as well. As a young professor, he moved to St. Petersburg with his family 3 years after that to join the Imperial Academy of Sciences. The professors were mainly foreigners, and especially Germans. For example, Falk was a botanist from Sweden, and Pallas was, of course, from Germany. The world-known cabinet of curiosities held all the strange things from all over the world. The library and the academy itself were also placed here. The scientific expedition training was carried out here as well. In Orenburg, one was led by Pallas himself. It was a huge area to visit, considering travel difficulties at the time. The scientific detachment had one mission which had objectives and goals already defined: to serve the government and to spread knowledge. Moreover, the Academy hoped that the travelers would be able to notice and describe everything: the weather, whether it's cold or warm, the customs and ceremonies of the people living in the country which they would cross. Also, all the antiquities found would be described in the journals as well. No place can be ignored, and nothing important would be missed. This is how they had to choose the road. Everything they'd witnessed had to be documented. They also had to collect zoological, botanical, and mineral specimens. One man would not be able to accomplish this trip to the depths of Central Asia alone. The whole caravan was needed for this purpose. Thus, a caravan left St. Petersburg on the 21st of June, 1768. It consisted of the professor and his wife, and other members as well, as equipment and clothes. Only after a year, after spending winter in Simbirsk, Pallas finally reached Uralsk, which was called Yaik at the time. Finally, after this trip finished, I reached the capital of the Yaik Cossacks on the 24th of July. I didn't notice anything remarkable but the ancient monuments. I'll stay here until the weekend. Report to the Academy, 1769. Chapter 2. A Fishing Town. There are many well-constructed houses, but the streets are uncomfortable and narrow. Jibek is a very crowded town, Peter Pallas recorded. There are melon and watermelon gardens in front, and there's also a nice grove located a little higher up in Jibek. People preserve it, and this is where they spend their holidays. A passage from Peter Pallas travels in various provinces of the Russian Empire. He described the town, people, and their customs in detail. The most important chapter was about Uralsk, a fishing town. The fishery used to be the Cossacks' most important occupation. Thousands of people would go out when the ice covered the river. It was the beginning of November till the end of December when, at the sound of a signal, people would start fishing. It was a national feast. The fishery laws and regulations were extremely strict. No one could go fishing without a special permit, which they could buy. They used boat hooks to harvest belugas and sturgeons. In autumn, they say this fish would be in the deepest places of the river. Many Cossacks lie down on the ice, cover their heads with towels to try and see the fish. They know these places. A passage from Peter Pallas travels in various provinces of the Russian Empire. There were two ways of fishing with boat hooks. The first was the so-called burst method when they fired the cannon. The second was a so-called heat method when all the people would step on the ice and start fishing. So that used to be the winter method of fishery. They also had a summer method when they had to build a special fence called an uchug. Here is a model of an uchug or uyshuk in Kazakh. It is some kind of a special fence to block the riverbed for the reason of keeping fish. A German professor wrote, the Cossacks claimed that the fish created high pressure on the uchug and therefore made holes in it. This is why they used cannons to banish the fish. He described this fishing method in his journals and mentioned that this place abounded in fish, and even the water was boiling and it damaged the uchugs. They even used to stop bell ringing during the spawning to keep the river calm. As a matter of fact, people didn't appreciate beluga's caviar. Pallas noted that because of its mucus, you could sell 16 kilograms for only 1.5 rubles, but the price of beluga itself is much higher than sturgeon. The fish at the emperor's table was from Uralsk. It was precious because of its taste. The delivery used to take 3 months, and they delivered it fresh, even though they didn't have any technology to do so. So how was it possible? Well, the local Cossacks told us that they soaked bread in alcohol and then put it in the sturgeon's gills. The fish would fall asleep, and then they put it into huge barrels. They had to keep changing the soaked bread during the trip. It kept the fish alive. Thereby, it was delivered to St. Petersburg fresh.
Помещали в огромные бочки. Мякиш по пути этот часто менялся. Рыба весь путь спала. Вот. А сока менялась. Да, нет, она была не мертвая. Вот да, таким образом в свежем виде вот и получалось довести до Петербурга.
The travelers were not impressed with the fishery only, but with rare diseases and plants, which they described in their scientific journals. On the 17th of August, I decided to visit Kazakh nomads on the eastern bank of the Jibek River. In the afternoon, we sailed and our horses swam across. The river is wide here. Camel's thorn, alfalfa and other herbs grow on its low and flat banks. A passage from Peter Pallas's travels in various provinces of the Russian Empire. Chapter 3. Some surprising discoveries. Pallas was the first scientist who combined two ways of transferring information with Latin and artistic descriptions. Gogol and Mandelstam admired the German professor's pencraft. Pallas was a marvelous German. He managed to travel throughout Russia from Moscow to Caspian. He was a very good writer and noticed everything. If he decided to travel again, he might have been caught by Pugachev. Pugachev liked well-educated people and would have made Pallas work for him instead of hanging him. From Osip Mandelstam's records. They stayed in the aul or village for one day only. The scientists nowadays still have reasons to travel there for more discoveries. Those reasons are a little-known legend of Kyrgyz Khan, a story about wizards who could make a willing prisoner out of a person, and the ethnographic sketches. Travelers would be welcomed very nicely, but it didn't change the fact that these trips were still dangerous. Where did they sleep? They slept in a fortress. Of course, it was horrible. There were a few people, so they just went through in the wild.
Совсем мало было населения, поэтому они шли по дикой природе.
Several days later, the professor and his students arrived in Saraychik. The ancient city was in bad condition even then. But Pallas wrote in his journal that defensive walls were still visible, about 5 miles in length. During Pallas's travels, the river flooded for 13 kilometers around the town, so he couldn't reach it. But finally, after 2 boats were sent, he was able to get there.
Реки были так разлиты, что он никак не мог попасть сюда. И тогда ему прислали 2 илбота, и на них только он приплыл в наш город.
It's better to travel by water because you don't suffer from the mosquitoes and black flies. In these records, you can see that members of the expedition severely suffered from these insects. There weren't such mosquitoes in Europe, but all in all, Western Kazakhstan's fauna made a positive impression on the scientists. Hogs, swans, and even frogs whose laughter sounded like human voices look very nice. This kind of frog French people should raise. The seals come up to Yaik from the sea in winter. I've never seen so massive seals as the Caspian ones before. They don't look like animals much, but like sacks with fat. Their heads and front legs are full of fat. Their skin is sold to the merchants from Astrakhan at a very cheap price. Passage from Peter Pallas's travels in various provinces of the Russian Empire. Pallas sent the tanned Saiga antelope hides to St. Petersburg as a gift to the Empress. Peter Simon discovered plenty of new plants and animals during his Caspian trip. Epilogue. Embracing the boundless steppes. This was the very first voyage to Western Kazakhstan, but Pallas went back there again twice afterwards. This land used to beckon people. Starting from the 17th century, there were a lot of travelers from Russia, England, and Europe who visited Mangostar. One of those travelers was Pallas. Pallas was the one who proved that this territory used to be a seafloor. He was able to prove that many other things as well, despite all of the travel's obstacles. Most of the time of his 7-year trip, Pallas had been riding a horse. In the end of it, he was seriously ill. He was only 33 years old when he got back to St. Petersburg as an old man. These people faced dangers and risked everything, sacrificing their lives in the name of discoveries to gather shreds of knowledge. And after this, everything else starts to fade away.
Опасностям, которые рисковали всем и вся ради того, чтобы добыть вот эти крупицы знаний, открыть что-то миру.
It took almost 20 years to show the world what they found in this expedition. Pallas explored Atirau and Uralsk, also its environment and history of Semipalatinsk, Ust-Kamenogorsk and Petropavlovsk. He embraced the boundless steppes.